Originally chartered by the Rhode Island General Assembly as Katy, USS Providence was a sloop in the Continental Navy. The ship took part in a number of campaigns during the first half of the American Revolutionary War before being destroyed by her own crew in 1779 to prevent her falling into the hands of the British after the failed Penobscot expedition. Service as Katy. From early 1775, British men of war, especially His Majesty's frigate Rose, searched Rhode Island shipping and annoyed the colony's merchants who had become wealthy through smuggling. 2 days later, the Rhode Island General Assembly ordered the Committee of Safety to fit out 2 ships to defend the colony's shipping, and appointed a committee of 3 to obtain the vessels. That day the committee chartered the sloop Katy from John Brown of Providence and the sloop Washington at the same time. The General Assembly appointed Abraham Whipple, who had won fame in the burning of British armed schooner Gaspee in 1772, commander of Katy, the larger ship, and made him commodore of the tiny fleet. Before sunset that day Whipple captured a tender to HMS Rose. Katy cruised in Narragansett Bay through the summer protecting coastal shipping. The supply of gunpowder, an essential commodity scarce in the Continental Army throughout the Revolutionary War, was desperately low during the first year of the struggle for independence. Late in the summer of 1775, the shortage in Washington's army besieging Boston became so severe that he was unable to use his artillery, and his riflemen would have been unable to repel an attack had the British taken the offensive. In an effort to obtain precious powder for the Continental Army, Cook ordered Whipple to cruise for a fortnight off Sandy Hook, New Jersey, to intercept a powder-laden packet expected from London. He was then to proceed to Bermuda to capture the powder stored in the British magazine there. Katy departed Narragansett Bay the 12th of September, but caught no sight of the packet. Later, upon reaching Bermuda, Whipple learned that the powder from the magazine was already en route to Philadelphia. Service as Providence. Soon after she returned to Providence, Katy was purchased by Rhode Island the 31st of October. Late in November, Katy sailed for Philadelphia carrying seamen enlisted by Commodore E.S.E.K. Hopkins in New England for Continental service. Arriving the 3rd of December, Katy was immediately taken into Continental service and renamed Providence. Captain Whipple assumed command of USS Columbus, a larger ship, and Captain John Hazard was placed in command of Providence, later formalized by a commission from Congress dated the 9th of January 1776. The ships joined a squadron being formed by Congress under the command of Commander-in-Chief of the Fleet of the United Colonies, E.S.E.K. Hopkins. On the 5th of January 1776, Congress ordered Hopkins to sail for Chesapeake Bay and clear waters there of the ships of a fleet organized the previous autumn by Governor Dunmore of Virginia. These English and Tory ships had ravaged the shores of the bay and the rivers which empty into it. Once Whipple's ships had completed this task, they were to move south and clear the Carolina coast of enemy shipping, before sailing north to Rhode Island to perform a similar service. Providence and her consorts departed Philadelphia early in January but, delayed by ice, did not get to sea until the 17th of February. Deeming it unwise to cruise along the southern coast, Hopkins led his little fleet to Abaco in the Bahamas, which they reached on the 1st of March and staged for a raid on New Providence. The next day they seized 2 sloops on which Hopkins placed a landing party of 200 Marines and 50 sailors. At mid-morning of the 3rd, under cover of guns of Providence and Wasp, the Americans went ashore unopposed on the eastern end of New Providence and advanced toward Fort Montagna, which opened fire interrupting the invaders' progress. The defenders spiked their guns and retreated to Fort Nassau. The next day Nassau surrendered and gave the Americans the keys to the fort. Hopkins then brought his ships into the harbor and spent a fortnight loading captured munitions, before heading home the 17th of March. Off Block Island, Hopkins' ships captured the schooner Hawke, belonging to the British fleet at Newport, Rhode Island, the 4th of April, and at dawn the next day took the brig Bolton. That evening the Americans added a brigantine and a sloop, both from New York, to their list of prizes. About 0100, the 6th of April, Andrew Doria sighted HMS Glasgow, a 20-gun sloop carrying dispatches from Newport to Charleston, South Carolina. The American fleet engaged the enemy ship for 1.5 hours before she turned and fled back toward Newport. After daylight, Hopkins ordered his ships to give up the chase and headed with his fleet and prizes for New London, where they arrived on the 8th. On the 10th of May, John Paul Jones assumed command of Providence with temporary rank of captain. After a voyage to New York, returning to the Continental Army about 100 soldiers whom Washington had lent to Hopkins to help man the American fleet, and after returning to Providence, Jones hove down the ship to clean her bottom and sailed the 13th of June, escorting Fly to Fisher's Island at the entrance to Long Island Sound. En route he saved a brigantine bringing munitions from Hispaniola from the British frigate Cerberus. Providence next escorted a convoy of colliers to Philadelphia, arriving the 1st of August. There, a week later, Jones received his permanent commission as captain. On the 21st, Providence departed the Delaware Capes to begin an independent cruise, and in a few days took the brigantine Britannia and sent the whaler into Philadelphia under a prize crew. On the 1st of September, daring seamanship enabled Jones to escape from the British frigate Solebay. 2 days later, Providence captured Sea Nymph, carrying sugar, rum, ginger, and oil, and sent the Bermudan brigantine to Philadelphia. On the 6th, Providence caught the brigantine Favorite carrying sugar from Antigua to Liverpool, but HMS Galatea recaptured the prize before she could reach an American port. Turning north, Jones headed for Nova Scotia, and on the 20th of September escaped another frigate before reaching Cancer 2 days later. There he recruited men to fill the vacancies created by manning his prizes, burned a British fishing schooner, sank a second, and captured a third besides a shallop which he used as a tender. Moving to Isle Madame, Providence took several more prizes fishing there before riding out a severe storm. One more prize, the whaler Portland, surrendered to Providence before she returned to Narragansett Bay the 8th of October. While Providence was at home, Hopkins appointed Jones the commander of Alfred, a larger ship and the commander-in-chief's flagship on the expedition to the Bahamas. Shortly thereafter, Captain Hoisted Hacker took command of Providence. The two ships got underway the 11th of November. After 10 days they took the brigantine Active, and the next day took the armed transport Mellish, carrying winter uniforms and military supplies for the British Army. On the 16th they captured the Snow Kitty. The next night, Providence, troubled by leaks which had developed during bad weather on the cruise, headed back for Rhode Island and arrived at Newport 2 days later. The British seized Narragansett Bay in December 1776, and Providence, with other American vessels there, retired up the Providence River. In February 1777, under Lt. Jonathan Pitcher, Providence ran the British blockade. After putting into New Bedford, she cruised to Cape Breton, where she captured a transport brig loaded with stores and carrying 2 officers and 25 men of the British Army besides her crew. Under command of Captain J.P. Rathbun, Providence made 2 cruises on the coast, and about mid-January 1778, sailed from Georgetown, N.C., again bound for New Providence in the Bahamas, this time alone. She also made prize of a 16-gun British ship and recaptured 5 other vessels which had been brought in by the British. On the 30th of January the prizes were manned and sailed away. Providence, with her armed prize, put into New Bedford. During the early part of April 1779, Providence was ordered to make a short cruise in Massachusetts Bay and along the coast of Maine. She later sailed south of Cape Cod and on the 7th of May, captured the brig HMS Diligent, 12 guns, off Sandy Hook. She fired 2 broadsides and a volley of muskets during the engagement, and Diligent, with mast rigging and hull cut to pieces, was forced to surrender. Providence then was assigned to Commodore Saltonstall's squadron, which departed Boston the 19th of July 1779 and entered Penobscot Bay the 25th of July. Providence was destroyed by her crew, along with other American vessels in the Penobscot River, the 14th of August 1779. To prevent her falling into the hands of the British towards the end of the failed Penobscot expedition, the Providence Maritime Heritage Foundation maintains a replica of the Providence, which bears the name of the original, that was launched in 1976, and designated in 1992 as the flagship and tall ship ambassador of the state of Rhode Island.